Bonjour. Boy, I love it. Hi, I'm Steve Smith, and I've been working with Rick Steves for 25 years, teaching him the art of travel in France while he taught me the science of guidebook writing. I'm going to talk to you about tours today, and I think the strength of our tours lies mostly in the guides who lead them. We have a variety of tours, over 36 different itineraries to cover Europe. Europe is our thing, and if you look at this map of Europe, you'll see that France, that Danielle referred to, is right in the center. It doesn't suffer from the heat of the extreme south, nor the cold of the north. This probably has something to do with why food is such a celebrated commodity in France. Everything seems to grow well here and taste good here, right? This image reminds me also, there's the strength of French cuisine that Danielle, I think, originally referred to before, isn't that it's better than other cuisine in Europe. It's that there's such variety of it. From region to region, everything changes. And I'll try to give you a little sense of that today in my talk. It is the diversity in France. Why would you go here? There is no country in Europe that offers such a range of diversity. From its great city in the northwest, Paris, arguably the capital, the most brilliant city in Europe, to the capital of the Riviera, Nice, in the southeastern corner of this country. You can pass and spend time passing farm scenes like this in the north, sublime color of red poppies in the spring throughout June, to the south of the country where sun-baked hill towns cling for their lives, an entirely different climate and geographic area. And if it's lavender that you must see, you have to go to France, right? And if it's coastlines that turn you on, France has two distinctly different coastlines. The Atlantic that you're looking at here, which is the rugged, more let's go see nature coastline, to the west that forms and looks across, let's say, over at England and the British Isles, to the southern Mediterranean and sun-baked villages and harbors like this, Villefranche-sur-Mer, just outside of Nice. All in one country, 80% the size of the state of Texas. Wow, there's a lot in this small country. And it's the highest peaks in Europe that you must stand in front of and see point blank. You must go to France, for that's where Mont Blanc lies at 15,771 feet. But France has more than just the Alps to engage your attention. And we see them all on our tours. In the southwestern corner of France, the Pyrenees divide France from Spain, harboring remote castles like this Cathar castle at Perpétues. And in the central southern part of the country, the Massif Central creates canyons of a depth and a breadth that attract travelers and adventure seekers, thrill seekers from throughout the world for whitewater kayaking, rafting, rock climbing, and this kind of thing. All in a country the size of smaller than Texas. But France is more than just beautiful scenery. This diversity that I referred to is amplified, I think, of visual diversity with its cultural diversity. From region to region, you can stay within this country and enjoy half liters of beer, full liters of beer one day with little kids in Lederhausen eating sauerkraut with wieners and ham hocks in the Alsace, northeastern corner of France. The next day, travel to the northwestern corner of France, where everybody looks entirely different because they are different, where Virginia's from, in Brittany. And the kids look freckled and red-haired. And in this far-flung Gaelic corner of France, where what is on their menu is about, they've probably never even seen sauerkraut before. Crepes, apple cider, products from the sea is what they do here. To the southwestern part of France, where Jorge here lives in France, but speaks Catalan, near the border of Barcelona, that corner of France, and serves paella, as they say in France, on the menu on a regular basis, to the southeastern corner, where the devil-may-care Italian influence imbues this part of France. And pasta is the most common thing you'll find on the menu. All of this in the same country. It is the diversity. When I travel with my French friends, and I do on a regular basis because they help me, like these three here, understand the country better because I do live in the United States now. I ask them, what should I order on a menu? And if we're in Bordeaux and they're from Burgundy, they say, I don't know. I don't recognize a thing on this menu. And they have to ask the chef or the waiter as well because it's foreign to them. Vive la France, vive la différence, and vive la diversité, the diversity, right? It's more than just a beautiful image, though, France is, of hill towns and good food and good scenery for you to visit while you're here. Boy, in many ways, this country of France is a yardstick of human achievement. right? You can trace the whole of European and really Western civilization within this country's borders by finding the best and the greatest prehistoric cave paintings that are available for us to see, and we do see them on our tours. 4 different caves offer that opportunity in France, to the Roman ruins in the southern part of France that rival anything in Italy 2,000 years ago. And in France as well, they constructed in the Middle Ages castles on a scale that hadn't been seen before, like this one at Carcassonne in Europe. And it was France that gave birth to Romanesque and Gothic architecture, stretching the churches taller, creating space for grand fillers like stained glass. This is French invention to tell stories on symbols to those in the 1100s who couldn't read and were illiterate, but could understand symbolism and stories from the Bible this way. It was in Châteaux of the Loire Valley in Versailles in the 1600s and 1700s, like this one, Vaux de Vicomte, that announced France's emergence as Europe's first superpower. And you can see it today with so many chateaux, a grand chateau to visit in the Loire Valley. And in the 1800s, France gave birth to the art form of Impressionism, right? Claude Monet, the father of Impressionism. You're looking at his garden right here now. And you can see the work that was inspired in that country afterwards in a museum. How great is that? To be able to travel to his gardens, to see these areas, whether it's a beach scene or Claude Monet's garden, and then find the inspiration and the product of that inspiration in museums nearby, like these water lilies that you're seeing now. Later in the 1800s, the French learned to construct with steel on a scale never heard of before, building towers like the Eiffel Tower here, rail stations, embracing this form of architecture like no one else in Europe. Even today, the French are at the avant, at the front of art, modern art, and still constructing museums, attracting artists through a variety of ways to keep their art and their culture current, not something that lives in the past. That's why you should go. And that's the challenge that our guides have, explaining all of that to you, the food, the wine, the cheese, the beautiful scenery, and the remarkable range of history that you have on any tour of France. It's a challenge for any guide to explain to tour members and yet still have time, like Chris here, to have fun with her group. It takes 5 different itineraries for us to take you to France, and I'm going to really whip through them quickly for you today to give you a taste of France, not a thorough understanding of every day and every minute of every day, but a sense of the differences between these itineraries and how we've decided we need to explain France to you through our tours. From the north, Paris, a week in Paris, to the south, a week on the French Riviera, brand new tour this year, to the Heart of France tour, which covers 11 days in this northwestern corner, to the Loire, to the south of France on the western side, to the wine regions of eastern France. We have 5 tours. We got you covered in this country. I'm excited mostly, I think, about the off-season tours that we're offering now. The French Riviera tour is off-season only, October through April, and the Paris tours that we offer. They're the best-selling tour I think we have in our whole system. They're year-round. If you take one in January, February, March, or I think December, I'm not quite sure about the December, they're at least $500 off the normal price. We're taking a lower profit and getting a sort of a deal from hotels to encourage you to travel off-season, particularly the French Riviera, guys. Why go in the summertime when it's hot, humid, steamy, and it costs you more for everything from flights to food to hotel, when we'll take you there in the off-season and guide you there for a great deal. And you save on those other things as well. All right. But the strength of our tours, again, is our guides. It's about teaching. To us, it's all about teaching on tours. If we haven't taught you through Danielle, Virginia, or Julie about what you're looking at, we have failed in our jobs. Our guides can orient you well and string together the excellent, remarkable histories that the experts that we hire, like Elwood von Siebold here on the D-Day beaches, will take their intimate knowledge of a cathedral or a location like the D-Day beaches and tie it together and form a larger context for how that location fit in with European and French history. We also give you all of our guidebooks and material so that once you're free, you can be a good student on your own. We do not want to guide you the whole time every day. So half of your day is usually occupied with us, getting you oriented, taking you through the Louvre Museum, let's say. But if you want to hang on like this couple did and see more of the Louvre Museum, you've got a great basis of a good start to that. And you're well prepared, well equipped, I should say, to do so on your own with your free time. And if we haven't taught you something about the first ladies in France today, we have really failed, because this for an American is absolutely fascinating. The previous president, Nicolas Sarkozy, left his wife of something like 11 or 12 years while he was president, married this sexy Italian movie star and singer Carla Bruni, only to be followed by the current socialist president, François Hollande, who lives in their White House with his girlfriend, to whom he's never been married. His ex-girlfriend is Ségolène Royal, with whom he raised his 4 children, and with whom he lived for 30 years, but also never got married. It's kind of like Bill and Hillary splitting up, and Bill marrying Katie Couric, because the current president's girlfriend didn't marry her, is a journalist. If we don't explain that to you better than I just did, and what's happening in France, and give you that sort of insight as to the differences, things that would never happen in the United States, we failed our job. And it goes beyond, though, the political scene. We want you to understand how people live today. If you haven't learned how to play pétanque, or boule as they call it, before the tour is over, we've somehow failed you, right? Tours are a great way to travel with friends and meet a good group of friends. No matter how good our history lessons are, our teaching is, the itinerary, how organized it is, probably the best souvenir that you'll have will be the people you meet on the tour. And the big advantage we have, thanks to Rick, our founder and leader, is the kind of people he draws to the tour. That's thanks to him. And these are the people you'll be traveling with. It's marvelous at the end of the day to be able to come home after your sightseeing and share a glass of wine or coffee or water, whatever, with people like-minded, open-minded, hopefully people. And that's all we ask when you join our tours, that you be open to cultural changes, differences of opinions on how European societies approach the same issues that we have. And we do leave you time alone that I mentioned before to make your own discoveries on our guided tours. We stay in the same hotels I write and research in the guidebooks. So almost every hotel on these France tours is probably one you're going to find in my books, our books, the France books that I do with Rick. From Paris, the Loire Valley, rooms are smaller in the city of Paris, naturally, be ready for that, to countryside hotels like this one. And most of your tour, by the way, in France, outside of the city of Paris tour and the French Riviera tour, we'll sleep in smaller towns, because that is what you want to do when you're traveling in France. After the big cities of Paris and maybe Nice, a lot of this is smaller towns. And hotels like this, the Hotel Diderot in Chinon, in the southern end of the Loire Valley, with a personal touch. You can read about the hotels that your tour is staying in the guidebook. We're not hiding anything from you, right? I like that. You're going to eat well in a France tour. They're determined, our guides are, that you picnic on a regular basis as long as the weather permits. And this way, there's something like 440 different kinds of cheeses in France, right? And you've got to taste most of them while you're there. Well, your guide can divide up 15 different cheeses at a happy hour, and at least give you a little sample. You see when you're in group fashion this way that you get a better sense of that. A joy for a guide is finding a restaurant that's right time, right place. Our guides get to choose restaurants on their own if they want to for our tour groups, or they use some that we recommend in the guidebooks, like this one, where you can have a beautiful meal with your group or on your own. Food is very important to Rick. It's important to our guides, and it's particularly important that we do it justice on our France tours, and I think we do. I mentioned before when I started, because of this festival, we've invited our guides out. We want to entice you to come with $100 off any tour in 2013, even the deeply discounted winter tours, and I hope you consider coming at some point. All right, here's my whirlwind trip through France. I'm going to start in Paris and work my way counterclockwise, I think, through this country, starting in the west, really, and then ending on in the east. So let's go. Paris, in 7 days in the Paris in the Heart of France tour. We'll start in Paris. Here's the itinerary for Paris in the Heart of France tour. I don't really need a map of Paris for Paris tour, but it starts here. 7 days in Paris, 6 nights, 7 days on the Paris tour. The Heart of France tour spends 1 and 3 or 4 nights altogether, 3 at the beginning and 4 at the end, after doing a loop through Burgundy, Loire Valley, Mont St-Michel, and Normandy, coming back to Paris for its last night. So in Paris, what do? Paris, the city tours I mentioned before, we do in winter and summer. And they're really great in both seasons, because the city animates itself so beautifully any time of the year. It really does. A week in Paris, you unpack once, you're done, right? And we're going to get you well oriented to the city. Your guide's job is just this, so that you can travel independently, understand the metro stops, how the metro system works. And it is remarkable in Paris. We give you a Paris metro pass for buses on the city tour of Paris. And on the Heart of France tour, we're there 4 nights. We buy the tickets for you. But the weekly pass is so handy to have when you're there for a whole week that we do it for the Paris tour, and then you're off and running with us. We'll spend a day on either tour getting you oriented and showing you the heart of the city, teaching you about the oldest part of Paris. Why did it form in the 2 islands in the middle of the Seine River? And what is that cathedral about behind Arnaud, one of our guides who lives in Paris and guides for us? We teach you. We're passionate about this. You can see the way he's looking at his group. This is what we do. And take you outside and into Notre Dame Cathedral, and then across the way to the Sainte-Chapelle, probably the triumph of Gothic architecture, just across the island, maybe 200 yards away, where the king had this castle built in a fraction of the time it took to build Notre Dame. And if you haven't seen this Sainte-Chapelle before, you've missed something very important in your travels in life, and I would encourage you to go time and again. On both of our tours that cover Paris, the Week in Paris and the Paris in the Heart of France tour, we give you museum passes so you can go in and out and in and out, and you don't have to stand in line. It's a marvelous feature that we do on those tours. We'll take you also, give you time to get beyond the island and get onto the mainland if you want, and explore the left bank, Shakespeare and Company, or hang out on your own at the end of the exhausted day maybe at the Luxembourg Garden, my favorite park in Paris, and just hang out and go local for a little while. Or maybe you cross over to the Marais district on the other side of the river. And on the Paris tour, we'll lead a walking tour of this medieval quarter of Paris. It is Paris at its medieval best, is the Marais district. It's also the center for the Jewish culture in the city, fascinating part of Paris's history. There were 75, I think, thousand Jews living in Paris before World War II. Today, I think there are 5,000 or 6,000. But the community is coming back every bit so slowly, and its cultural influence on the city through museums and art is growing and impressive today. The Place des Vosges is the centerpiece of the Marais district in Paris. You'll also see the Louvre Museum on either tour that you do with us. Many tours do this museum tour at night. It's open Wednesday and Friday nights. Independent travelers go at night because it's very crowded in the daytime. On our group tours, we hire a guide and we get in a special entrance so we can manage the crowds more easily in a group situation. Elizabeth Van Hest here is also one of our guides for our tours, but she's also a local guide. This is a very common feature. In fact, how I met Julie Sanvo, the American who spoke to you earlier, was she was a local guide at a castle we'll talk about shortly. And that's how I met Elizabeth, whom you're looking at here, guiding in the red jacket, guiding in the Louvre Museum. We'll see the Louvre 2 hours together and leave you time alone to explore it on your own. We'll see the great women, Winged Victory, from the Greek era, the Hellenistic era, Venus de Milo, Mona Lisa, and end chronologically with a crowning of Napoleon in the mid-1800s, when this painting was late 1800s by David. Then you'll have the afternoon free to tour the Champs-Élysées to the Arc de Triomphe, where you get grand views back down the Champs-Élysées, just sashay down this avenue on your own without a guide. No guide should take you down the Champs-Élysées. This is so simply done on your own. I love the morning in the Louvre and the afternoon free because it's just simply a direct metro ride to the top of the Champs-Élysées, and you can relax at this cafe paying €8 for an espresso. It's ridiculous to spend that much money on espresso until you realize that the waiter won't bring you your bill until you ask for it. So what you do is you bring lots of postcards or a book to read, and then you have 2 hours there. And then you pay your €8, and then you say, well, that was only €4 an hour. That was a pretty good deal that I had. You see, that's what the French do, right? I mean, you don't have lots of espressos at 8, but you do one, and you don't go in a hurry either. You go to a place like this and you relax on the Champs-Élysées, and we'll teach you how to do it. If I had my choice, I'd send you to the Champs-Élysées nighttime over daytime, anytime, to do the very same thing. The Arc de Triomphe is open, that arch that I showed you earlier, until 11 o'clock at night most days of the year. On another day in the Paris tour, we'll take you up to Montmartre, the one hill in Paris, the one area of Paris that until 1870 was its own community. Taxes were different, they were lower. There was a wall separating Montmartre from the rest of Paris, right? And we'll take you up here and take you on a walking tour of the city with an excellent local guide to this unusual neighborhood, again, on the one hill in Paris, and its monuments that inspired artists like Toulouse-Lautrec or Auguste Renoir. There are still mills and the Moulin de la Galette that you can still see sort of partly today. And artists like Vincent van Gogh. This is where these impressionist artists often learned from each other and created their style learning and collaborating, I guess you would say, with each other. And then the afternoon we'll spend at the museum that houses the art that they produced. How great is that? Go where they lived in the morning, go in the afternoon down to the Musée d'Orsay, the old renovated train station, and see one of the greatest museums of Impressionist art, where Manet, Monet, Paul Cézanne, from pre-Impressionism, post-Impressionism, brilliant tour of this museum, right? And if you want to go past what painted art, you can follow 15 minutes away, find the Rodin Museum, where Auguste Rodin did for sculpture what you could say Claude Monet did for painted art in the Impressionist era, creating sculptures, romantic sculptures like the Thinker, right, or the Kiss, all part of the Impressionist art movement. That day is a brilliant day, all for Impressionism on the Paris tour. Another day on the Paris tour, we take you out to the Châteaux of Versailles. This is a full day trip. It's so vast and so big and so important that to try to do this in less than most of a day, I suggest it is folly almost. So we'll take you out there, get you well oriented, tour the interior with a local guide of the palace. You'll see every one of its 565 rooms. Just kidding. I don't even know how many rooms, but I imagine there's more than that. You'll get a sampling of the rooms on the inside, and then be set free to tour the gardens, which are huge, really. It's more like a national park on the outside before heading back to Paris together. I like to end any visit to Paris with the Eiffel Tower. Now, you can reserve this before you go. We don't do this together because going up those small elevators, I think it's a mistake. I think people want to see the Eiffel Tower at different times of day. It's not part of the museum pass anyway. You can book long in advance before you go for individuals. Your guide will help you as well when you're there. But I prefer going right about an hour before sunset. Get a decent day, book it ahead. So if the sun sets about 7 o'clock, you can make your reservation for 6 o'clock. Depends on the time of year, naturally. And head up the Eiffel Tower and then and watch the light change in the city. It's really beautiful this time of day. And then come down to see it glowing at night. All right, the Heart of France tour on the tour, we include the tour of the Louvre Museum and the Orsay Museum and Central Paris, Notre Dame and the Ile de la Cité. You can also have time on that tour to do, you could go to Montmartre, you could do other things that I showed you, but you'd be rushed. The week city tour covers all those destinations at a relaxed and good pace, right? The Heart of France tour continues south into the Burgundian region. This is where my home is, where I live part of the year, where my parents live, I should say, just outside this village of Brancion. And we'll stop where I met Julie Sanvo, the first guide you met today, at the Castle of Guédelon. I don't know any other American tour group that does this, but this is one of Europe's most fascinating sites. A castle that's being built right now today, based on the design of Philippe Auguste, right? I got it right? From the 1200s. And what they're doing is they located this construction site in a quarry so they could draw the stones out, and we can watch them build this castle using only techniques and equipment from the 1200s, from the early 1200s. It's a study site. It's going to take them 40 years pardon? 25 years to complete. And how long are they into it now, Julie? Halfway through. So this tower today that you're seeing is probably a lot taller than when I saw it, right? Much taller, but it's still a process in construction. And our guide take us through that museum, through that site, and then we'll have time to understand. And you have to imagine how much the French have learned about castle construction by doing this very project. Then we'll sleep nearby in the beautiful and overlooked and totally backdoor city of Bourges in the central part of France. Beautiful place with one of the great Gothic cathedrals that you've probably never heard of in your life. And we have 2 nights there, so we have time to visit it the next day and understand its gorgeous stained glass windows, and then be left alone to visit the city on our own, its gorgeous half-timbered alleyways and such. Then we're off to the Loire Valley, the land of 1,000 different castles and chateaux. We'll pass through the city of Amboise, the greatest chateau in the Loire Valley of Chenonceau, and the grandest of them all, Chambord. This one is unique to this tour. We only do the Chambord Castle on Paris and the Heart of France tour. 440 rooms, 365 chimneys. You could have a fire in a different fireplace every day of the year. I think that's kind of neat. But a little information goes a long way. Why so many chimneys? And you can tell all the chimney spires on top of Chambord. This is Chambord Castle in the Loire Valley. Remember, these Loire castles announced France's emergence as Europe's first superpower, economic superpower. Well, hunting was the rage. That was the sport. Hunting is best done in the winter when the leaves fall off the tree because all the forest in France is deciduous. So you see the animals better, right? So you do it in the winter when there's no leaves to get in your way. Well, it's cold in the winter. Fireplaces and tapestries, you can see a lot of them. And this was a king's castle also, thus the large scale of it. The king has lots of friends. When he comes to hunt with the king, he needs lots of rooms. All right, we're going to sleep in a chateau hotel of our own, though, in the Loire Valley. This is a new feature this year, and I'm thrilled to finally find chateau hotels that will take our groups so that you can sleep like a king when you're in the Loire Valley on the Paris in the Heart of France tour. Then we'll bolt west to Brittany. Somebody likes Brittany, I know, in my group here. And you'll see the gorgeous coastline of Brittany. You'll tour a town, whether it's Fougères or Dinant, one of the beautiful cities of Brittany. Wandering the walls, this is Dinant, one of my favorite towns in Brittany, where you can have a crêpe, remember before, and have some time on your own, wandering this lovely, half-timbered, very different feel than other places you've been town, before arriving at the end of the day at Mont St-Michel. Virginia mentioned before that our motto is to arrive after 5. Otherwise, you run headlong into this. How many tourists, and I think it's a great majority of them, see Mont St-Michel between 10 and 4 o'clock and have an entirely different opinion of it than you do, independent travelers or people with us on tours who see it after 5. That's the same street. Let's do that again. Just a slightly different angle. Why wouldn't you go this way? Well, this is the kind of thing I learned from Rick Steves, that kind of knowledge goes right through to our tours. We'll spend the night on the island at the Mouton Blanc Hotel, have dinner, then wander back down below to see it illuminated at night every night of the year. No country in Europe illuminates its monuments like France. It is a country that's very important to get out at night and see the church in your little village, see Mont Saint-Michel Abbey like this every night of the year. The exciting new news in Mont Saint-Michel is, maybe you know this, they're getting rid of the causeway that blocks the water from going really around it and creating a true island that was built in the 1800s. And maybe by the time you go, it will really be an island again, because they're building a suspension bridge, you could say, with just pontoons in the water as it goes across, and making people transfer to shuttle buses to get there, which is already happening today. In the morning, we wake up and have the island to ourselves, pretty much. We'll get up, get going early, tour the beautiful abbey, the monastery above, and then get the heck out of there while those crowds come in. So then we're going down while the tide comes in of tourism for the day. An hour away lies the capital for us of Normandy, the city of Bayeux, B-A-Y-E-U-X. It has a glorious example of Norman Gothic architecture, and most importantly for most travelers, one of the great artifacts of the Middle Ages. This is the tapestry of Bayeux to the Battle of Hastings in 1066. When William the Conqueror, here's where you learn about this guy, these names you've heard about before, when William the Conqueror defeats Harold. And this tapestry that acknowledges that and celebrates that grand victory of France over England, right, in 1066. We'll do it justice, and we'll also have time to wander the back streets of this lovely city of Bayeux. And then the next day is a big day on the tour. We want our tour members well rested for this day, particularly because most of you are American, and those of you who are not are probably Canadian. And we honor the Canadians who take our tours. We honor them not just because we're friends of theirs, but because on the D-Day beaches, the Canadians were involved well before Americans, and recognizing that from our guides and for any American, I think is an important thing to do. We'll spend all day on the D-Day beaches, and for you Americans who have debated whether you should go, trust me, any guide will tell you this is the most powerful part of the trip, because it's part of a trip that you have involvement in Europe's history, unusually so. And they really haven't forgotten. The French, in no way have they forgotten what involvement that the Americans and the Canadians, for example, had. The beautiful D-Day beaches, which today look like this and are lovely, looked entirely different 69 years ago. We'll take you then all day and explain to you the brilliant strategy of Winston Churchill and Dwight Eisenhower and others in this remarkable and largest ever amphibian invasion. Our local guides are absolutely brilliant. We use the best ones I list in the guidebook, because we can pick them out for the tour, and if you're an independent traveler and they're busy that day because they're on a tour with us, I'm sorry. That's the advantage we have. This is Dale Holberg. He's brilliant. You need to see one of these guides. They'll change your life, really, in your appreciation. We'll visit the Pont du Gard, where 225 rangers were asked to scale this cliff and take out 6 different German machine guns at the top. And you'll see the positioning of the lookout here and the ranger's dagger. You'll see it from below and above, and you'll have really the information that you want to understand this powerful place. You'll see other sites along the D-Day beaches, other gun installments along the Atlantic Wall defense, sea defense. See the remainders of the fort, of the artificial harbor in Arromanches, where the Brits towed across with Americans old boats and huge chunks of concrete to create an artificial harbor that surprised the Germans. Lastly, we'll end up with the American Cemetery, powerful site where about 10,000 Americans are buried today. You'll get an introduction, have time to visit it on your own, and maybe wander down to the beach and imagine Saving Private Ryan scenes. A lot of it was filmed right there below Omaha Beach, where the American Cemetery is. It's a powerful day. It's a historic day, and one that you won't want to miss. And if you're traveling, by the way, independently, and I know I get a variety of you out there, hire a guide for that day if you can afford it. It's pricey on your own, but that's one place where it's really worth it. Then we'll loop back to Paris along the Seine River Valley and stop where I mentioned before in Giverny. Giverny. Now, Julie mentioned before, no, I think it was Julie, about this pronunciation thing. And I love what she said before, Giverny, G-I-V-E-R-Y. We're going to say Giverny, or Giverny. Most Americans will say Giverny, right? And when you come up to most French people and you say, and you're going to learn because your guide's going to teach you this, parlez-vous anglais? You say, first of all, you're going to say, pardon, monsieur, madame. That's the right way to start anything. Monsieur, madame, or pardon, monsieur, madame, parlez-vous anglais? Do you speak English? And they'll say, ah, no. And they may even wave their finger at you a little bit. Ah, no. And then you'll do what Julie said because your guide taught you, ça va. Avez-vous une? And then he'll look up at you and say, well, actually, I do speak a little bit of English. You're going to get that, and you're going to be mad at him for teasing you, but he's not. The French really don't want, they don't even think they speak their own language well. And for them to offer to speak another language and torture another language is worse than drinking white wine with steak, I think. They just won't do it. But those are the kind of lessons our guides can teach you. And Giverny, the name of Giverny, will come up time and again, and our guides will do the best we can to teach you those pronunciations. Anyway, here's where Claude Monet spent the last 40 years of his life, cultivating his art and his garden. It's the Camp David of Impressionism in many ways, and you get to be inspired by this. Your guide will give you a good introduction to this area and all that it meant to Impressionism before landing back in Paris for your last night. What a great 11 days in France. If you've never been to France before, and you're going on your own, follow the same route. Create it on your own. If you want to go on a tour, this is the best tour I think we have in France if you've never been before. But this is the one that turns me on even more if you have more time. We've changed this itinerary on the western side of France to start it outside of Paris this year because not only does it save money, because Paris hotels are so expensive, we realized people were paying us to take them to Paris again to start another tour because this tour used to start in Paris when they didn't need to see it again. So now we get to start just south of Paris in Chartres, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Go through the Loire Valley, the Dordogne, Carcassonne, Provence, and end in the French Riviera. Wow. This is really the highlights of Western France without question, with a little bit of the East as well. We'll start an hour south of Paris at Chartres. So you're going to, Chartres, Charters. Yeah. And I'm not, I mean, really, it's hard to pronounce, and nobody expects you to get this perfect. And it's not just the greatest Gothic cathedral because it was built in such a short order after a fire. It's the greatest Gothic cathedral for a tourist to visit, and it's grand, and look at how big this is, and it's a small city that it's in. It completely overwhelms the city. It's great to visit because of this guy, and we got him because he's a friend of Rick's. We have Malcolm Miller for our local guide. He's the expert, probably the greatest guide for the Middle Ages of any. He takes the cathedral and teaches you about the Middle Ages like nobody I've ever heard before, and we have him for 2 hours. On your first morning. We have 2 nights in Chartres, so that'll be your morning. And if you're traveling independently, hire this guy. He's in our books. Hire him. He's good. He'll teach you about the cathedral from the outside, the great sculpture, and how this means life was like in the Middle Ages. Imagine that it took 1,200 years to build most Gothic cathedrals, or Notre Dame in Paris. The average person lived 35 years in that day and age. So your great-great-great-great-grandson might live to see what you started as a Mason. Right? And understanding that mindset and getting outside and inside and understanding the value of stained glass windows to teaching stories of the Bible is brilliant. But even just as brilliant is capitalizing on that and taking you next door afterwards to the stained glass center, because Chartres stained glass is reputed to be some of the greatest in the world for Gothic stained glass from about 900 years ago, 800 years ago. Then we'll go to the stained glass center for anybody who's interested and practice the art on our own. And also at least understand how they did this. Because it's so often that you look at this stuff and say, that's interesting, but how did they do it? Well, we take you to Guédelon Castle on the previous tour that I mentioned, the castle construction site. So you see how stone was pulled from the hillside. So you see how it was dressed and moved up on a squirrel wheel to the top. We'll also show you how stained glass was made. I think that's part of education, and I think you'll appreciate that on our tours. You'll also have free time in a beautiful city of Chartres. It's probably about 30,000 people, very manageable to enjoy on your own, and you have 2 nights there. And the cathedral, again, like every monument in France, is beautifully illuminated at night. Typically on our tours, and commonly, we do first night together, dinner together, where your guide will organize a dinner of regional specialties, so you'll know on your next night, which is on your own, what you should be ordering, what should be on the menu in this region, right? First night we cover, second night on your own, and then on we move. We'll join our bus then after 2 days in Chartres, and continue south to the land, the happy hunting ground I mentioned before, the Loire Valley. Here's where I'll cover these chateaux in a little bit more detail, because we do the Chateau of Chenonceau, the greatest chateau in the Loire Valley, on the Paris and Heart of France tour as well. It arcs over the river Cher, C-H-E-R, and it is built by 3 different women from the 1500s. It deserves careful attention because it's so beautiful. So your guide will get you there when the crowds aren't there, and you'll see the glorious gardens and tour beautifully restored rooms on the inside that are still what they looked in its day and age, and see a chateau cuisine, a kitchen like you've never seen before in Chenonceau. We'll then give you free time to stroll throughout the nearby town of Amboise. This Amboise is on the Loire River, and this is the town where Leonardo da Vinci spent the last 3 years of his life. It's because he was drawn here by Francois I, the Renaissance king of France, that he brought his 5 favorite paintings with him, and those paintings are now in the Louvre Museum today, which is why the Louvre Museum has more finished artwork of Leonardo da Vinci than any museum in Italy. You can visit his house here. It's called Le Clos Lucé, but it's more important just to know this is where Leonardo da Vinci lived. And this Roman candle of genius that burned out almost 500 years ago created designs and drawings for inventions that you can't imagine. And in the basement of his house that I just showed you, you can see models from his drawings of 500 years ago of things like, I can't even remember what this is, but the spaceship over here. You'll see tanks. You'll see models of vehicles even. And hard to imagine what he was thinking 500 years ago. Remarkable place to visit. Amboise is a great city for free time before we end up the end of that day in backdoor Loire Valley. This is my favorite town in the Loire, Chinon, C-H-I-N-O-N. Joan of Arc memories, Eleanor of Aquitaine, Richard the Lionheart, all spent their time here. In this castle and in this town, you'll have time the next day to tour the castle outside and in. It's largely a ruined castle because it was built before those palaces, those other ones I showed you. And it's earlier than those. This one was built for defensive purposes. You can tell by looking at it, whereas the Chambord Castle and Chenonceau were really pleasure palaces built after gunpowder had arrived west and rendered castles useless for defense. Now we just built them for pleasure. This one predates that. In Chinon. You'll also visit the greatest chateau for gardens there is in the Loire Valley at Villandry. If you're a gardener, you're going to love this. And you'll have time back in the town of Chinon. This is why I like it. Look at this town. It's lovely on the Vienne River. Everybody thinks of the Loire Valley as the Loire River and that's it. It's all about different rivers in the Loire. You can take a canoe trip that afternoon if you want to on your own on the Loire, on the Vienne River, or take a bike ride if you want. Chinon is beautifully placed for activities like this. You'll have free time to pursue those activities if that's what you want to do. Then we head south into the Dordogne region, stopping halfway at one of the more powerful sites in France, at the town of Oradour-sur-Glane. Here, June 10th, 1944, so 4 days after the invasion of D-Day, all 642 townspeople of this village were rounded up by the German SS and murdered. 4 days after the D-Day invasions. There was rumors of resistance activity. I'm not sure that anybody knows for sure why this happened. But one thing we know for sure is this was not a rare event. What is rare is that Oradour was left exactly as it was found, as a monument to this kind of tragedy, so that we won't forget that these kind of tragedies took place then and still take place today. You can wander through, and you will wander through Oradour-sur-Glane with us, and see rusted out cars, rail line, for the streetcar from the nearby city of Limoges. Sewing machines rusted out, bicycles rusted out, cafe tables. A city of 642 people back then is a sizable place. It's a powerful monument, a powerful memory, and we don't avoid those kinds of stops on our tours. We'll make sure you see that before arriving in a much happier place, let's say, in a beautiful place. And oftentimes Americans' favorite destination in France when I guide tours, the Dordogne Valley. The Dordogne River and hill towns like Baynac here, and traditions like walking your geese at night that everybody has to take part of, right? We spend 3 nights here. We stop for 3 nights and slow down because this is such a beautiful part of France and there's so much to do here. What a shame to rush through this part of France. We'll spend 3 nights here, and if you want to taste the foie gras that those geese I just showed you before produced, that's the forced stuff, feeding of the geese, that's fine. But we won't make you do it. But what we will make you do is wake up early in the morning, I hope, and enjoy this beautiful city of Sarlat that in 1962 had all of its streets eliminated of car traffic. A direction from the Minister of Culture for the whole state of France then. Wow, 1962 they had that presence. This is the main square, which the next morning after you arrive looks like this, because we plan our itineraries to arrive on market day, and so should you independent travelers. Enjoy market day where you can find foie gras, walnuts, walnut wine, and have fun shopping. Your guide maybe will give you a job to shop for a different part of what we call a potluck picnic that we have together. That's how these things occur. Everybody has a job and something to purchase, and you have all day in Sarlat to enjoy the market, to see the sights in the town, and maybe midday we'll have lunch together at the park nearby before moving on. You'll tour the greatest thing to do in the Dordogne River. One of Rick's favorite things to do in all of Europe, we'll do together, and that's to grab a canoe and float down the lazy Dordogne River, stopping for medieval castles like Castelnau if you want, beautiful riverside villages like La Roque-Gageac, and stopping if you want to get out and tour this brilliant castle, or stop and ending here. It takes about 2 hours to do this float, and you can take longer if you want to, in Baynac, where we get out and wander up and tour the castle, one of the great, really, here's a feudal castle compared to those palaces of the Loire Valley, with rooms that evoke a certain day and age, and views from those castle walls that are unlike anything you'll see in the rest of France. The Dordogne region is the most famous for, and we'll devote part of a day, much of a day, to seeing those prehistoric paintings that I mentioned before. We'll visit the museum in Les Aisies that does a brilliant job setting the scene for prehistoric art, because most of you have no idea what this is all about. Art from 14 to 15,000 years ago. We'll wander into a cave. There's several different caves that we go to, depends on the tour that you're on and what we can book ahead of time. These are from Ruffignac, and there are also multicolored paintings from 14 to 15,000 years ago that you'll get to see while you're on tour with us in the Dordogne Valley. After 3 nights there, we'll hustle south into the southwestern part of France and arrive after 5 again, checking into the largest fortified walled city in Europe at Carcassonne. You'll have time to wander the walls, have dinner together or on your own. Cassoulet is on the menu at every restaurant, I guarantee you, in this town. It's a local favorite of the area. And then get out at night and wander these. We do a self-guided walking tour in the guidebook of France. Your guide will have you follow that, or maybe they'll guide you together so you can wander on your own and see this brilliant city, which in the daytime, again, 10 to 4 is just a packed with tourists, but at night you're leaving in the morning early when they're coming in. Then we're off. And we're on the Riviera, the Mediterranean now, crossing east to west, west to east, stopping at one of the greatest Roman monuments there is anywhere in Europe, at the Pont du Gard aqueduct, where 44 million gallons of water flowed on a daily basis to the grand city of Nîmes over 2,000 years ago. Almost all of this building of this aqueduct was constructed, imagine this, before the invention of mortar. No cement. Those stones, almost all of them, are all just placed together just so. And when there are floods, and there are floods in this area on a regular basis, it's the modern bridges that get pushed away, washed away. And it's the Roman ones that remain in place. It's hard to believe, but it's true. Then we'll end our day in Arles, a great example of Roman architecture also. Arles is like a lab experiment in how to present everything that a Roman city had 2,000 years ago. The city of Arles is only 50,000 people today, and this is an image, obviously, that I just got off the internet, but it shows you the Rhone River, and this is what it looks like today. It's theater, it's arena, right? And this is the development of the city. We'll stop at the historic museum. Look at this now. And look and see the scale model of the city from 2,000 years ago. There it is, Rhone River, warehousing. I'll back it up. Warehousing over there. Same thing, 2,000 years later, right? What's amazing for me and what's great about the museum, I want to say, is that all of those Roman monuments, baths, the Forum, the theater, models of them are on display in the museum for you. And what's new in the museum that's really exciting and why you have to go if you've already been, is they've just dredged up a Roman ship from the Rhone River. That it was like a freighter ship from 2,000 years ago. And they built an entirely new wing on this museum, which will be open this year for its presentation. That's exciting. That brings, then you see the museum, you see, and you see what this is all about. And then you go visit the real stuff in the town with your guide. And then you can hearken back to what you saw. That's the theater. Today it's rather ruined, but the arena is in great shape. The baths are in very good shape. And you have a chance to really get a picture of what a Roman city was like. Now imagine this, too. 2,000 years ago, Roman Arles housed 100,000 people. Today, 50,000. How weird is that, Americans, to imagine a city losing half of its population in 2,000 years? Amazing. Contemplate that. Okay. Well, at least it amazes me, right? Okay. And the city is a great city just to relax and enjoy. It seems like it's market day every day of the week in Arles. It's just a lively place to hang out at a cafe on the main squares and enjoy just life in Provence. This is also the city that attracted the Dutch artist Vincent van Gogh, who spent about 18 months here in the 1800s. You can walk on, there's no art of his here, but you can walk in his footsteps, and there are these plaques with his paintings where he stood and was inspired by them. So this is right over this is Starry Night over the Rhone River, if you can see that, right? You can stand right there. Well, I'm standing there looking at the plaque with the description of the painting that you know very well of from other museums or picture books, etc. But you can see the spot he stood, and there they have a copy of the painting on concrete tabloid for you to see. There are about 14 different ones of those in Arles. That's a great way to enjoy and respect an artist like Vincent van Gogh. Then you can hang out at his cafe. Little known fact that he was a cafe owner, right? All right. On this tour, we'll also show you the Provençal countryside and beautiful villages like Les Baux. We'll get you there at the end of the day before the tourists arrive and show you this brilliant and careful to visit it at the right time of day hill town with catapults there for you to enjoy as well. Then we're heading off to the French Riviera for the last 2 nights of this tour. It's about a 3-hour drive through the countryside, the Provençal countryside, to the French Riviera, and we'll end up with 2 nights in Nice. And I hope that you, if you're on our tour, that you extend at least 1 more night, because the city probably, you shouldn't pay us to make you stay another night, but you could use 3 nights in the city, I bet, because we'll occupy your time well. In France's 5th largest city, it's a beautiful city, and they've renovated the city in recent years. I really used to not like going to Nice. Now I love it. But they built a light rail system, much like ours, that runs to the airport here in Seattle. But on the streets, this is all urban, it doesn't go to the airport, they removed cars from all the streets that it runs on. So you create squares like this. Used to be a big traffic circle, the Place Massena. And at night, it's just a huge pedestrian zone. It's a lovely place to go. We'll focus on the old city of Nice in our morning walking tour. Looks like you're in Italy, doesn't it? Well, until the 1870s, this part of France was part of Italy. The Principality of Italy, Savoy. We'll visit our favorite market people, because there's a market in the Croix Salée every day of the week but Monday. And you'll have time to visit museums like the Chagall Museum that you won't find anywhere else in the world. Here in Nice, which the Riviera attracted so many artists in the 1800s and 1900s, contemporary artists for whom there are entire independent museums. There's a museum to Marc Chagall with his brilliant colors, to Henri Matisse. These are both in downtown Nice that you can visit, and his artwork. I recommend the Chagall Museum above the Matisse Museum, but they're both very interesting, and they're pretty close to each other. Or you could go the other direction culturally. Skip the art and hang out on the beach and go local. Yeah. That's a summer in Nice on the rocks. Right, it is. The beach is very rocky there. We'll take you away from that, though. You don't have time for all of that. We have 2 nights in Nice. You have a chance to enjoy. We'll take you out for a great last night dinner, and you'll have a chance to enjoy some of the local specialties. This is my favorite from this Riviera region. It's called bourride, B-O-U-R-R-I-D-E. It's like bouillabaisse, you could say, but it's a poor man's bouillabaisse. It's a creamy aioli fish soup stuffed with varying types of seafood and shellfish. Right? That is the Loire to the south of France tour. If you choose to take our week in the Riviera, you also do those things. The old city of Nice, you get to see that, as well as There it is, as other things. And you get time to enjoy the Promenade des Anglais. Wander there along the Promenade des Anglais with your guide or on your own. See the Russian church in Paris, modeled right after St. Basil's on Red Square in Moscow. Mostly, though, what the Riviera tour does that our Loire to the South France tour doesn't do in this area is it adds day trips. And the day trips from Nice are brilliant. By the way, we stay right on the Promenade des Anglais, or the Quai des Etats-Unis, which is the same thing in our hotel when we're in Nice. We are in the thick of it there. Right around the corner from Nice, we can go to Villefranche-sur-Mer, one of the beautiful little harbors nearby. Enjoy its little central square. Walk seaside walks, sea-splashed walks. Enjoy the Villa Rothschild, just across the bay at Cap Ferrat, whose neighbor is Paul Allen. I know. This like Châteaux, built in the early 1900s, is a remarkable site and a beautiful structure, and the gardens are what it's most famous for, and you're getting a sense of it here. I was for a long time skeptical of this place, and it took our guides on the tours to tell me, you got to get this in the book, Steve, because our tour members like it so much. And so I include it, because you're halfway between Nice here and Monaco. So with our Riviera tour, you also have a chance to go further on to Monaco, spend your morning maybe at the Prince Albert's palace. Was Prince Rainier's for so long in my life. This is where his son, Prince Albert, lives and rules Monaco Principality from today. You can tour the aquarium, the Jacques Cousteau Aquarium, which is in the heart of the city, visit the casino, and even spend some time gambling and looking sexy like these people are. Yeah, I got this one off the internet just for fun. Actually, today you have access to the gaming rooms as tourists that you didn't have before. It's a new thing that's going on in Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo, by the way, is the area where the casino is within the Principality of Monaco. That's important to clarify, I think, for some people. Then you'll also have a chance to go down to Antibes, and if you sandy beaches you want, this is the place to go to hang out on sandy beaches. Antibes is a beautiful city right on the water, about half an hour the other direction from Nice, that is to say west of Nice. Beautiful old streets, back streets, the Picasso museum dedicated just to Pablo Picasso. And if there was ever a museum just to his art that you wanted to see, there's one in Barcelona, there's one in Paris that I'm familiar with. This is my favorite. It's right on the water. You can see what inspired him after World War II to live here for 5 years and paint, I think I have the number of years right, his artwork, and there you are, right on the water. Brilliant museum in Antibes. And I mentioned before, great sandy beaches with views of Antibes in the backdrop. We'll also spend a day wandering up into the hill towns just above Nice on this Riviera tour. You'll go, it's remarkable how quickly the mountains pour right down into the city of Nice. And of course, that helps create the privileged climate in Nice by protecting it. You'll wander past hill towns into the city of Grasse, famous as the perfume capital of the world, I guess, or the Western world. We'll tour a perfume center like this, tour the Perfume Museum, which was recently completed in Grasse. It's a beautiful museum to perfume. Never did I think a museum of perfume could interest me. It was one of those places I went to as a researcher saying, okay, I got to see this because somebody's going to care about this, right? Who's taking my book over here. And sure enough, it was really brilliantly presented. And so now our tours are going there on this Riviera tour because I think it's worth your time and you'll be impressed. You can buy anything you want there, but more it's to get an education on the history of perfume and the importance of it to the French economy historically, right? All right, so that's the Riviera for you. Now I've got about 5 minutes left to go through my wine regions of the eastern France. I may take a little bit more than 5 minutes, but I won't be too much longer than that. I'll respect your time. This is the eastern edge of France. Now, we call this tour the wine regions of France. It's not a wine tasting tour, but the fact that we're going from Champagne to Alsace to Burgundy to the Rhone Valley, you can't help, it just happens that that's the greatest itinerary through the eastern side of France. You're going through all these great wine-producing regions, and that's the one label we could use to link them all together. This tour also does not start in Paris. You can fly to Paris. We think we're serving you better that way by not making you pay us for those nights in Paris. Come 2 nights early and do your own thing in Paris. Usually you've been to Paris before taking a tour like this, and then take the 45-minute train to Reims. Yes, it's pronounced Reims. Reims. And I know, kind of rhymes with France. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm looking at your face, and I know. You have to ask Danielle or Virginia about that one. But that's part of the language fun, right? So it's a short hop by TGV bullet train to Reims from Paris, by TGV train, through the Champagne vineyards to Reims. Champagne, one of the Champagne capitals. of this region. And we have 2 nights, one really full day there to show you one of the great Gothic cathedrals with Chartres. The cathedral, the Gothic Notre-Dame de Reims that you're looking at here is one of the great Gothic cathedrals in Europe. It was here that most of the French kings were coronated, and it was here that Joan of Arc wanted to bring Charles VII to liberate France from the English in her quest. You'll enjoy the city of Reims, the surrender rooms for World War II, where the surrender was accepted of the Germans. You'll get to taste champagne in champagne cellars, right, with your group. Our hotel is right on the main square, so dinner at night on this tour was brilliant right outside. The next day, we'll go through the battlefields of Verdun, World War I, taking you on a locally guided tour of the battlefields where 800,000 men died in 18 months. Powerful sight. Before we get to the Alsace, you'll see this and understand the warfare techniques that were used and what led to such phenomenal high scale of death. To the Alsace, where we'll set up in Colmar for 3 nights on this Wine Regions of France tour. You'll get to taste the choucroute, those sauerkraut dishes with ham and fine wine sauce. You'll get a great walking tour of the beautiful city, the Alsatian Germanic city of Alsace. You'll see the Isenheim altarpiece, one of the great works of art in Western Europe to see, the 5-panel polyptych in Colmar. And we'll also have a chance to visit the Bartoli Museum, where Auguste Bartoli, who is the sculptor of what monument? Statue of Liberty, right, is from. And he's from Colmar. You'll take a day out to go on the wine roads of Alsace, touring the Route du Vin, seeing small villages, getting to walk in the vineyards, right, and taste the wines from this area before heading south into my favorite area of Burgundy. Canals, lovely Beaune is your base for 2 nights of Burgundy. You'll see the historic medieval hospital in Beaune, brilliant site for the Middle Ages as well. You'll eat escargot with us. You'll go on it's market day in Beaune when we're on our tour there. So much like Sarlat and the Dordogne, maybe you'll go buy a potluck picnic at the market, and then you'll have a chance to go on a bike ride through the vineyards, as I've done on TV with Rick, or join our bus as we go out for a great wine tasting to the Châteaux of Rouy here and eat that picnic we bought and assembled during market day in Beaune. So we have a private tour of the chateau that is a wine-producing chateau in Burgundy. Before heading up to the Alps, 2.5 hours away to the highest points in Europe, we'll spend our day in Annecy, the most beautiful lakefront city I know of in any alpine area. Take the day for visiting this beautiful city, and then head up at the end of the day to the highest Alps in Chamonix, where we spend 2 nights trying to get near that highest peak in Europe of Mont Blanc. You'll have a chance to eat fondue, right? And then take the lift up the next day, up and over the Alps. This is really a remarkable trip, where you can go up to 12,500 feet and with your partners dangle by these teacups for 45 minutes, passing the Matterhorn, the Mont Blanc, and other peaks at 12,500 feet before you land in Italy. Then turn around and come back. It's a great day, and hike one of the most sensationally this will be trails in France on the high above the city of Chamonix. After 2 nights in Chamonix and a full day for that, we'll head south to Provence, where we spend 3 nights in one of the most lovely villages of Provence. Our other tours slept in Arles, in a city. Here we'll sleep in a village of Provence. And this Vaison La Romaine is like a small mini Pompeii, where we'll have 3 nights, 2 full days, one to explore the ruins of Pompeii, and another to get out and have, I mentioned 2 nights, to have dinner on your own, 1 night, 2 nights, 1 night with our group. We'll get out, see the vineyards, see the greatest Roman theater there is at Orange, about 20 minutes away. This is like the Pont du Gard of aqueducts in terms of its uniqueness in the Roman world today. And then we'll take you on a wine safari on the Côte du Rhône route, one of the most beautiful wine routes I know of in France. We'll pass villages like this and stop at one of them to visit one of our favorite winemakers, where we'll have lunch probably, and you can taste wines before, and having 1 more night for your dinner in Provence before we head south, where this tour ends in Marseille. This is our first year ever, our first time ever to end a tour in Marseille, the number 2 city in France. And the reason we're doing this is it's a fascinating place that's surrounded by interesting areas as well. And also, we want you to see Marseille through our eyes, and it's got a fantastic airport very close by and brilliant sights to see after the tour is over, if that's what you prefer doing. Marseille will surprise many. The port is classic, is beautiful. We'll take you up to Notre-Dame de la Garde, one of the most amazing churches that you can see, with brilliant interior and views to the islands below. And you'll have a chance, if you want, to try the source of bouillabaisse from Marseille, if that's what you really want to do on your night there. So all of these itineraries that I mentioned. All of these days are described well in our catalog that you have, but it's best to get information on the website. It's $100 off until Wednesday on any of these tours that I mentioned to you before. So whether you take the tour of the wine regions or the Loire to the south of France, you'll have a great time on your trip because of your guide. And you'll have a joyful time because of your guide and because of the way these tours are organized. Bon voyage, everybody. Thank you very much for attending. Remember, I'll be at, thank you. I wrapped that up pretty good. I will be answering questions along with our famous 3 French guides in down the road, just to your right in the floral center. You'll see a sign that says Cantina. Thank you very much for your attention. Merci à vous.